personal finance expert and MeVest founder Lesley-Anne joining us on Canada Now. And Lesley-Anne, your latest article in the Star discusses pro tips to invest better in 2022.
Wouldn't we all like to invest smarter and achieve those nefarious rates of return that people talk about? Of course you do, right? As if you're preparing for retirement, whether you're early, you feel like you're late at it. This conversation today is really relevant because it's going to root you in some fundamentals that the wealthy follow.
Yeah. Now, as you note in the article, this isn't a get rich quick method. Like financial security, wealth, that's usually built over time.
Indeed. In fact, the data shows it takes a working career to really prepare for retirement. So if you were one of those people trying to hop on like the Bitcoin trend or something fast, right? Like I tried not Bitcoin, but like I remember when I was really young, trying to hop on some like one hit wonder stocks, and usually it doesn't go all that well. So when we think of wealth building, we have to take that long-term perspective because it does take time, and it also takes you having that habit formation that's going to serve you throughout all of this time. And like we'll talk a little bit about that today. But the other thing I want to note is that when we look at research on what wealthy people are doing that you can do too, we distinguish wealthy people by a measure that is they have about $1 million of invested assets. So this is not including your home. So if you're listening and you are one of those people who's like, I just made it big in the real estate market, I'm not sure where you're listening from. But if that's you, I want to just be clear, we're not talking about the value of your real estate here. We're actually talking about the value of your investments.
Right. Now, for looking at those big factors that really set the wealthy apart, first of which is they actually think about their retirement.
Absolutely. And when they think about retirement, they know they need to save more. So here's a reality check. Everyone's living longer, and we have this terrible thing called inflation, which is extremely high right now. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately, but I know our grocery bill is like 25% higher at the present moment. So inflation is going to work against you in your retirement planning. So wealthy people proactively plan for this and they save more. You may have heard the old rule, save 10% of everything that you make for retirement. Well, guess what? They're saving 15 to 20%.
Wow.
And that means that they have found a way to live off of less of what they're earning. So they live a leaner lifestyle than somebody else.
Sure, absolutely. And you also talk about aligning with the kind of risk that you should be taking depending on which part of your life you're in.
So life stages should dictate where you're landing on the risk scale. And when I teach my students about risk, I explain the risk scale on 5 points, 1 being low risk, 5 being high risk. And as you work your way through life, you should move from the higher end of the scale down to the lower end of the scale. And a great way to think about it is by decade, at least 1 point each decade of your working career.
Okay.
If you do it that way, you won't miss the boat. So the biggest mistakes I see with people's risk exposure and investments is they are not properly aligned with their risk and their life stage. So let me explain that a little bit further, because by decade, it would mean basically in your 20s, you're a 5, your 30s, a 4, 40s, a 3, 50s, a 2, 60s, a 1. So you're graduating down and making sure that you're taking your risk exposure off the table the closer you get to retirement so that you don't kind of miss the boat and put your retirement nest egg at risk.
Yeah, and being like on the other end of things, in that I am um taking care of my parents' money. Like my dad left us last year, and I'm just overseeing and making sure that my mother's money is still green. And
Mhm.
in the past number of years, Lesley-Anne, I have learned so much about how my father invested. And I always knew that he was the type of person that didn't take risks. And I'll tell
Mhm.
you, he didn't take risks a long time ago financially. It felt like he's always invested at a one since the beginning of when he started investing. And now, though my mom is fine, we do look at the past and say, what could have been though with the money they had at the beginning of when they started investing like 40, 50 years ago.
Absolutely. So risk needs to be taken in order to grow your nest egg at a rate that's going to keep up with inflation and make sure that your assets are growing. So that risk scale is also associated with expectations around your rate of return for different life stages. Now, you can't look just at 1 year of rate of return. You've got to look longer term. Hence, we work in decades. We need to look at 10-year chunks of time to see that you're at least achieving the market rate of return during your decade. And Jeff, I actually also have a family member who's doing what your dad did, but at a much younger age. And I would just say that breaks my heart
Yeah.
because I would love to see that person really grow their asset pool, but I can see the mistakes being made because they don't understand the risk scale.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm glad you spell it out. I'm sure you helped a lot of people right there in giving that kind of a breakdown, because it really breaks it down in a way that's easy to remember. Talk about wealthy people, and the biggest factors that sets them apart is one thing they do is, as you mentioned, keep an eye on their fees and keep them as low as possible. That's something that might be swept under the rug that we might not pay attention to, but they do.
I often find people don't even know what they're paying for investment fees. So, reality check: everybody will pay a fee to whoever you invest with, whether you even do it solo. You will still pay fees if you're DIYing it or if you're working with a wealth manager. But what wealthy people do is they ensure that they get the best bargain on their fees that they can possibly get. So that is often a negotiation with if their wealth manager, or they're choosing lower fee products or lower fee services to ensure that fees are not eroding their retirement nest egg. So I think if you've been following along, there's a couple factors that can erode your retirement nest egg. Fees are one of them, inflation is the other, which is why we want to get that rate of return as high as we can while keeping the fees low. So the double whammy bad situation is where you're not achieving a solid rate of return and you're paying too much in fees.
Yeah, and taking advantage of tax saving opportunities when investing.
That's right. So almost everyone, like if you're living in Canada, you are over the age of 18, you're going to have access to some tax advantage retirement savings account. Your RRSP is one of them. And I like to view the tax free savings account also as your secondary. So some people view that TFSA as like a storage facility for some short term savings. And I'll tell you right now, my friends, that if you use it like that, you are really not taking advantage of the power of that tool. So, using it actually as a retirement tool, a long term investing tool, is way better. You're going to benefit way more than using it like an ATM. So wealthy people first fill up their retirement savings accounts, the ones I just mentioned, also through work. So if they have access to something through work, it's often matched. They're taking advantage of that. But they're doing it because they don't want to pay unnecessary taxes and they want their money to grow as much as possible. So guess what? The third thing that like erodes your nest egg, taxes, right? We
Yeah.
talked about inflation, we talked about fees, we talked about taxes. So you can kind of start to see what the strategy is with wealthy people. They have figured out a game, which is how do I keep my hard-earned money
Yeah.
growing?
And they exercise a lot of patience, and very often they're not doing it alone.
That's right. So they know that they are in it for the long term. And if they are finding themselves in a limitation, right, like they don't possibly know what they're doing or they're busy people, they actually outsource, if you will, the management of their investments. So we have data that shows that DIY investors, people who are like buying on their own, often don't achieve market rate of return unless they have some kind of formal training. And that's okay, right? Like if you want to try and do the formal trainer, go for it. But often we don't have the time for it. And I would just say, if that is you and you don't really have the time and energy, go and get some help. A financial planner can help you. A wealth or money coach can probably help you. A wealth advisor, all of those people, they should be kind of on your speed dial or close to you so that you could get a referral from somebody who has them on their speed dial.
Absolutely. Check out mevest.ca, personal finance expert, Mevest founder, Hank and Dot's mom, Lesley-Anne Scorgi. Always a pleasure, Lesley-Anne. It's good to have you back and good to be back in here in 2022. We look forward to many conversations this year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.